With the Diamond 12i now officially released, the crew here at AVR were left asking a pretty obvious question. If the Diamond 12 is already such an incredible loudspeaker series, critically acclaimed, award-winning, consistently recommended, not to mention the fact that it is still winning awards some 5 years after its original release, why mess with it? No obvious problem to fix, no glaring weaknesses, no reviewer consensus pointing to a specific failure. How would Wharfedale even approach such a venture? And maybe more importantly, with a design that is this well resolved, how do you make meaningful improvements without disturbing the balance that made the original so successful? Well, let's find out. Now, you can't feature 12i without first acknowledging its rather formidable predecessor. Diamond 12 marked this rare collaborative moment for Wharfedale, bringing in Karl-Heinz Fink, one of the most renowned speaker designers of the modern era. Fink's approach is methodical and measurement-led, but it's always anchored in musical balance rather than spectacle. The Diamond 12 range was a full technical overhaul. A newly developed polypropylene mica driver material, rib-reinforced cone molding for stiffness without over-damping, computer-modeled intelligent spot bracing to control cabinet resonances, something Karl-Heinz is renowned for, and an unusually sophisticated Linkwitz-O'Reilly 24 dB crossover using air core inductors. The result was immediate and sustained acclaim, backed by Product of the Year awards, countless 5-star reviews, near universal recommendations from the likes of What Hi-Fi, StereoNet, Hi-Fi World, Hi-Fi Choice, and so many more. Diamond 12 has kind of been this indomitable force in the entry-level market for the last half-decade. So when a loudspeaker gets this much right, an overhaul, it stops making sense, and what remains is a quieter, more delicate task, really identifying the few key areas where refinement is possible without undoing what made the original work in the first place. So what's new? Well, the changes are deliberately restrained, but what's most striking, at least at first glance, is this all-new matte finish. An overdue update that modernizes both the baffle and cabinet without altering its original form. Look, let's call it spade a spade. Gloss has been on the nose for some time now, and while Wharfedale's Diamond 12 technically only used it on the front baffle, the look is still a little dated. In addition to matte finishes, Wharfedale are ditching white altogether and replacing this light oak finish with stone grey. It's similar in approach to Lunar Grey from the new Wharfedale Evo 5 series, but far closer to something like BMW's Brooklyn Grey. The original wood-textured black veneer is now a flat matte finish, and Walnut gets a matte black baffle. All very contemporary, very tasteful. But beneath the surface, Wharfedale have chosen only to revise the rear port tuning and the internal airflow. That's it. And once you get past the new matte finish, Diamond 12i really isn't trying to reinvent anything. And that's where the real conversation starts. Now, with every new release, Wharfedale send out a product document detailing a new speaker's features and importantly, their design approach. And because the changes to Diamond 12i are so subtle here, port tuning and airflow, I think it's important to explain in Wharfedale's own words exactly what these changes intend to resolve. Now, I've got the product document here and I'm gonna read a direct quote. The outcome is a bass response that is better controlled and more articulate, with improved transitions between low and mid frequencies and consistent spatial performance no matter the placement. So let's break that down just a little bit, yeah? We've got bass that has better control, is more articulate, improves transitions between low and mid frequencies with consistent spatial performance. So in the remainder of this video, we are going to break down exactly what this means, how it affects your listening sessions using music that best evokes the improvements Wharfedale has set out to achieve. And I'm gonna listen to both Diamond 12i and the original and see if I can pick those differences. So let's get at it. With better bass articulation, you're not listening for more bass, you're actually listening for better behaving bass. You want notes that start and stop more decisively. You want less low frequency energy hanging around longer than it should. Kick drums that feel better timed with bass guitar, rhythms that feel more assured. Now I chose 2 tracks to expose these differences. Khruangbin's Tongo Bara from their collab album Ali with Vu Fakatur, and Massive Attack's Angel from Mezzanine. On Tonga Bara, Laura Lee's bass is compositionally exposed. It's melodic, discrete, and intentionally shaped. If articulation improves, you hear it immediately because the bass line asks to be followed. But on Angel, the bass is doing something very different. It's not there to be read as a line, it's there to apply pressure. It's dense, sustained, and partially masked by guitars, distortion, and atmosphere. But that's precisely why it's dangerous for ported speakers. Improvement I found was most notable on Tonga Bara. Lee's bass had much better shape to it with the Diamond 12i, and that makes complete sense, right? When notes start and stop more decisively, the ear can localize them better, and that alone increases perceived 3D structure even if nothing else changes. So that is a big tick for Diamond 12i on my first A/B test. This is where a lot of reflex speakers quietly fall apart, that low to mid transition. Here we are looking for guitar and lower piano notes to feel less thickened. We're looking for mid-range to feel calmer at high volumes, and cleaner male vocals, those lower register vocalists. Think Leonard Cohen, Tom Waits, Nick Cave, or my personal favorite over the last few years, Colter Wall. Wall is this deep country baritone, very similar to Johnny Cash, often paired with sparse arrangements. So with improved port behavior, his vocals should sound anchored and articulate. We want to listen for how phrases end. Cleaner tuning lets the voice decay naturally without the cabinet or port holding on to it. Now, it's here in the mid-range, even the lower mid-range, where the fingerprints of one Mr. Peter Como, as well as senior engineers Dan Ballionellis and Oliver Davies, are most likely to be found in what is still an otherwise wholly Karl-Heinz Fink design. Mid-range is somewhat of a specialty for Mr. Como, his signature touch. And again, in an A/B comparison, it was immediately noticeable. Nothing from Colter Wall's Imaginary Appalachia EP is almost a worst case scenario for low-mid behavior. Wall's deep baritone, combined with heavy, sustained reverb tail on his vocals, and the track's very sparse arrangement, there's just nowhere to hide underperformance in this specific area. Reverb lives across the same low-mid region that port behavior can contaminate, so if bass energy hangs around too long, it's going to thicken the reverb tail, making the vocal feel smeared. And that's exactly what I heard with Diamond 12. Because bass energy is decaying more slowly, it inflates the reverb tail and collapses the depth cue, telling my ears what's foreground and what's background. So by comparison, Wall's vocals felt swallowed up by that reverb. With Diamond 12i, his vocals burst through all that noise. In fact, the noise disappears entirely. He's far clearer and detailed. The reverb is still there, but far more orderly. And that's the second big tick for the Diamond 12i. Spatial consistency matters a lot more than people admit. Now, this doesn't mean a big soundstage. What it means is that your image doesn't collapse when your speakers are close to walls like mine are, or when volume increases, because let's be honest, who doesn't like cranking their tunes, nor when bass-heavy material is played. It means that your center image stays locked, and that stereo width feels stable, not elastic. What the low end shouldn't be doing is pulling the image around. For this, I chose Everything in Its Right Place from Radiohead's Kid A, partly because I know it so well, but also because lesser systems can easily come undone. There's a lot going on here. Multiple synth layers, shifting phase relationships, sustained low frequency energy. With better controlled bass, fewer spatial cues get smeared, and the soundstage feels more disciplined. And that's broadly what I heard. The original Diamond 12 sounds bigger and looser. The Diamond 12i sounds more controlled and cohesive. Now, which you prefer may depend on taste, room, and placement, which is interesting, right? Because what Wharfedale are claiming here is consistent spatial performance no matter the placement. And that may well be the case, but every room will react differently. And based on what I heard, I could picture a scenario in which a listener might very well favor the wider, looser feel of the original. I guess it's up to the individual. Importantly, Diamond 12 never felt unruly. Diamond 12i just felt slightly more disciplined, more cohesive. So I want to pause here at the end for a second because all of this is really, really subtle stuff. And I'm genuinely not convinced that the average listener would notice these differences unless they were shown what to listen for. And that raises an uncomfortable but important question, right? Are you hearing real improvement, or are you hearing what you've been told to look for? And honestly, I don't think that that's a flaw, because this isn't a night and day upgrade. Nothing jumps out and demands attention here. What changes is the absence of small problems. Less blur, less hangover, less effort required to follow the music. If you don't listen for it, you might miss it. But once you do, it is very hard to unhear. And I think that tells you exactly what kind of upgrade Diamond 12i is. Importantly, these updates do not affect Diamond's original character, the very character that made it such a dominant force in the entry-level market for the last half decade. This is very much still the award winner we know and love, albeit with some subtle bass optimizations. For Diamond 12 owners, there is no need to race out for an upgrade, unless of course the matte finishes better speak to your aesthetic preferences. But for those of you considering a Diamond based on previous critical acclaim and its stack of accolades, Diamond 12i is simply a better looking, better sounding version of the original. Well, that's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned just a little bit more about this new release from Wharfedale. If there's anything more that you want to know about the Diamond 12i series, simply head on over to avrevolution.com.au or leave us a comment below. We will endeavor to get back to you as soon as possible. I'm Matt. It's been a blast. I will see you in the next one.